Mr. Alex Godling. And City Councilor from St. Anne de Bellevue, Mr. Ryan Young. Louder. Excellent. So Ryan also does a radio program at Radio McGill. So I interviewed him a few times. And so the way we thought about setting up this time as our Christmas Alex is that it would be a little bit easier, he felt, because he's kind of a shy individual. That's why he's hiding in the back here. So we're going to do it as an interview. So Ryan is going to interview Alex. So Alex has been involved, we met him a couple of years ago. He's been involved in this projects where they're actually rolled out for food banks in Montreal. And so when we look at food security within our community, they are kind of a place that would be very influential on anybody. Is how the market gardeners do things, how they operate, and the different methods from starting things in the greenhouse to the field and field production and so on. And so tomorrow we're going to have Daniel Brieswald, who runs a company called Turn Soil. And he's also a market gardener, and he provides 600 food baskets a week for a period of about 26 weeks. So can you imagine that? We had 600 food baskets a week here for people, for families in Ganawage. And his production site there at Turn Soil is on 12 acres. I mean, the farm is a little bit larger because you have to rotate and have green cover. So this is the idea. So I asked Alex. Alex was going to come last year, but unfortunately, he had passing in his family, and so out of respect, he withdrew, and it's understandable. So this year we're fortunate to have him come, and then Mr. Ryan Young, who's been involved in the fruit tree project that they have on their walkway in St. Anne de Bellevue. So he spoke about this last year. So along their bike path, I don't know how long it is, a mile and a half maybe, different kind of trees, fruit trees where it's open to the community just to go and pick it. And they just tell people, just take what you need and leave for other people. And so he spoke about that. He spoke about different things, those that also did well and those that did well. And the thing that I remember most about it that was really impressive was those Japanese pear apples. He said they did very well. So this year I'm going to try to get one or two of them going myself. Maybe I'm not going to enjoy it because it takes time, but my grandchildren will. So that's all part of the futuristic things. And so once again, Alex and Ryan, here we go.
Thank you. Are you sitting or standing?
Yeah. Well, no, we'll sit. All right, so we're going to sit down and have this chat. So I have some notes here that I'm going to follow to ask Alex all these questions. But one of the things that maybe wasn't mentioned in his introduction is we have a farmers market in St. Anne de Bellevue. It's kind of pretty well known now. It runs from May until October, and he's on the board of directors of the farmers market in St. Anne de Bellevue as well. So he has good knowledge about what's involved in farmers markets. And before you worked at Cap Saint Jacques Farm for Des Trois Pierres, he also worked on Ramsey's farm, Les Jardins Carrière, and of course Ramsey spoke last year as well. So, do you want to add anything, Alex?
Yeah. Also, before Ramsey, I worked at Fermes du Zéphyr with Stephen Homer, who is one of our pioneer market gardeners in Quebec. Way back in the late '90s, he actually started market gardening farms, and and growing wild stuff like arugula and kale, which we didn't know about back in those days.
That's it.
Yeah. So I've been in the West Island for almost 15 years now as a farmer, and this year my main project is called Cultiver l'Espoir, which is a 5-hectare, so about 10 acres, project of growing root crops for food banks. So 80% of what we grow is given to Moisson Montréal, who then distributes it throughout the city to food banks, community groups, and the other 20% is sold to Metro to kind of hopefully cover our costs, which we almost do, but not quite.
That's it. And we'll get into maybe a little bit of that discussion, but there's been a recent change to the organization.
Yeah, so up to last year was Des-Trois-Pierres used to run the farm at Cap-Saint-Jacques and in Bois-de-la-Roche. Des-Trois-Pierres' main mission was work integration, so they would hire adults who were far away from getting back into the workforce, who needed help learning basic work skills and all that. But with the last few years, the pandemic, the shortage of workers, François Legault government in Quebec City cutting budgets, the program kind of fizzled out, so the main activity was no longer needed, apparently. So they shut down the doors just this December, and Cultiver l'Espoir is moving on with the help of a new organism called Regroupement Partage, who also do programs like Opération Sac à Dos, which gives school supplies to children who come from poorer families, and also Christmas baskets for poor families at Christmas time.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I just put up a photo of Cap Saint-Jacques, the area where they have a lot of their farming operations. So there are some fields there, but then there's another location down the road from there, which is a larger area.
Yeah, and it's actually zoned agricultural, which helps a lot, because in Cap Saint-Jacques it's zoned conservation, so we have stricter rules of where we can plant and what we can plant and all that we have to negotiate, I'll say, with the biologists of the city of Montreal. And so in Bois-de-la-Roche, which is zone agriculture, it was left to the city of Montreal by the Johnson family a long, long time ago, and the condition was that it always had to have an agricultural purpose to it, which is great. So we used those lands with the help from the city of Montreal to grow the root crops for the food banks.
And a lot of it is not used, right? So
yeah, so far we're using like 5-6 hectares, and there's with a little bit of drainage work and leveling of the fields, we can get up to 50-60 hectares eventually. So the city has a short to long-term plan about doing some of these operations, but obviously money is always the hardest to come by for projects that are not in the mayor's backyard.
That's it. So yeah, maybe I'll put some context there, and then we'll continue to talk about that. So, you know, all of this area, Cap Saint-Jacques, Bois-de-la-Roche, and then I'm in Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue, and we have a big part of these conservation lands that Montreal owns, and now are all part of this Grand Parc de l'Ouest. So you may have seen Valérie Plante made a big kind of announcement a couple of years ago saying that she's going to have the largest urban nature park in all of North America. That's the idea. They kind of cheat the rules a bit by how they define it, because they haven't acquired all the land to make it the largest park, but they kind of include lands that they don't own when they say it. But the idea is, you got all these organic farms, like his farm that he manages, Ramsey's farm, and then you've got all these forests and these wetlands. But the thing is, Montreal merged, if you remember, there was the municipal mergers in the early 2000s, and they merged the whole island of Montreal as one municipality, but then a bunch of municipalities like mine didn't like that, wanted to keep our independence, so we fought to demerge. So all of this area that, except for Cap Saint-Jacques, because it's in Pierrefonds.
It's in Pierrefonds, yeah.
Is not an area that Valérie Plante's party can get votes. So there's a little bit of a complexity there where they want to protect all that land for the right reasons, but sometimes when it comes to budgets and allocating budgets and making a case, they would rather spend their money sometimes in the East End, like the way East End, where there's still farmland and forest, because there they can get votes, because that area is part of the big city of Montreal. So that's part of the challenge that...
and it's, there's Ile Bizarre, and then there's Pierrefonds, and the St. Anne's, and Senneville, and all the different municipalities have different values and projects that they want to go ahead with. And farming doesn't pay tax bills, right? There's not much, can't tax a farmer that much, so it gets complicated. But we're trying to mobilize. All the West Island farmers are trying to get a warehouse built so we can wash and store and distribute all the vegetables that are grown, so that we can mutualize our resources. Instead of having each or small one building, we can have one big building that could process all these vegetables that we can grow, because between all the farms we could feed a lot of people, and including hospitals and schools and all that. So trying to get Montrealers access to their own food that's grown on their own land.
And Montreal did, for example, they bought a truck that could be a delivery truck that they all share.
PMM
so they
Montreal.
have put investments in...
Yeah, PMM Montreal bought the truck.
Okay.
I don't know who, that's the city or...
Right, but I guess a
branch.
connected organization.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And, I think both Alex and I, we kind of share the same vision, where we see the potential for all of this land to be farmed organically, and even maybe have a partnership with Kahnawake for some kind of farm that would be...
Yeah, we've been working with Stephen trying to get a First Nations garden in Cap Saint-Jacques as a demonstrative educator garden, but it's been 2 years.
It's a bit slow.
It's been slow, yeah.
But I have hope for the future, and I think the other thing is they're building this electric train, right? And this electric train's final destination is right at the doorstep of this park in the St. Anne de Bellevue Park, and that kind of connects everybody in the area by public transit to the area, to visit the area. So I think at that point maybe we'll see more attention and commitment come when it's really being developed into a real...
Yeah, and there's an election in 18 months, so that always helps to get things moving a little bit.
But I want to ask Alex, just what it's like growing a lot of root crops, and what is involved, and what are the challenges? And
so where we're growing, it's a very heavy clay field. So for root crops, it's quite a challenge. But we've learned to make our raised beds and make sure that we use the fields that have the proper drainage and all that. And obviously, the biggest thing is. I couldn't do it by myself, so I have 4 guys who come every year from Guatemala, part of the temporary foreign worker program that the government of Canada has, and they're great. There's 3 brothers and a stepbrother, and they've been amazing. They're a blessing. It says a lot about our food sovereignty that we need to import agriculture workers into Canada to grow our food. And I just only do 5-6 hectares. I can only imagine the big producers. I know that places like Savoura have 200 workers in their greenhouses for 2 years at a time. So it's another thing that's coming to us in the future about our sovereignty, is who's going to grow the food, because apparently we don't want to grow our food anymore. We have to have workers come in. Or do we give more value back to what a farmer is? Because most people don't want to farm because they don't want to work 75 hours a week for $5 an hour anymore, because it's just not worth it. So can we bring the value back into the actual job of a farmer, a gardener, a grower, a seed grower, all these people who feed us, who sustain us and are not recognized. Like so many people who come to a farmer's market and argue about prices. Why would I pay $5 a pound for tomatoes? And it's just like, well, if you grow them, and then you'll see why you should pay $5 a pound for tomatoes. Yeah. So it's been a big challenge, but I'm blessed to have great workers who come every year. The work integration was also a big motivator to try and help young people to get back on their feet. But just every year when we go and we do the Christmas distribution of all the the root crops and all that. And you see over the past 5 years, the number of families have doubled in food banks. And that's just by my own eyes. I don't have the official stats. It's probably higher in the last couple of years. So it's really important to grow our food and make sure that it's accessible to everybody. Because if it's only the rich people who can afford it, well, there's no point in growing it, I think.
And so I want to ask you, Alex, why did you get into farming? What attracted you to that, and what keeps you motivated?
The main thing that got me into farming was just the friendliness of the work and the people that you meet every day farming. I've never met, no, it's not true. I've met one grumpy farmer in 15 years of farming, and he had good reason to be grumpy. So, but people, and it's such a resilient community who care about not only what they're doing, but their clients and their communities and all that. So it's really I find it's the most beautiful job I could do. And what keeps me in it is hope that we can have our food sovereignty. It's going to be a really big issue in the future. The pandemic was really scary when the workers couldn't come, and they were like, oh, just get waiters and taxi drivers to come and harvest asparagus and strawberries, and nobody could do it. So it's a good opportunity to learn and teach others how to sustain themselves, and hopefully bring the value back into our communities for farmers.
And obviously working outside, being in nature.
Yeah, I don't have to go to the gym, so that's great.
And I remember there was this red-tailed hawk that was always coming to your field.
Yeah, he would just follow us around as we'd plow a field. The hawk would just fly above us, and park the tractor, he'd come down and just sit on the windshield mirror. It was pretty great. And we have deer all around who you can recognize them from when they're babies. It's amazing. Farming is it's life basically. And, keeps it simple. Before I was a farmer, I worked in post-production for movies and TVs, and that was so fake, and people were so fake, and they were so unhappy that it got to me, and I had to get out of there. I couldn't hack it.
Absolutely. The business side of things, how much does that factor into your work, or have you learned things about the business side of farming that surprised you, or?
Well, obviously, when I was working with Ramsey, we would always talk about like margins and profits and and Ramsey always said every other field, it's like, oh, we need 33% minimum margins, but in farming, you're at 10, 20, you're like half of what regular industries are. So you have to adapt, and obviously, human resources are what costs the most in farming, and so the more you mechanize, the cheaper you can get. But it's a very difficult balance to find to actually make money. If you're not losing money, and you can not work 80 hours a week all year round, I think you're winning as a farmer. But I think we also need to recognize that farmers should be treated just like every other worker, because there's no overtime pay for farm workers, right? If you work 65 hours a week, you don't get overtime pay. But why is this applicable to farmers but not to anybody else? I've never understood that one. So I think it's really just about recognizing the value of the work and treating farmers with respect and dignity.
And you know, the challenges of farming on public land, because the land is often owned by Montreal.
Yeah.
You talked about the leases.
Yeah, so usually with Montreal, it's like a 3-year lease, a 1-year lease, and if you want to modify a building or dig a hole, you need their permission. So I wanted to install an underground irrigation pipe so I could, save the trouble of setting them up every year and all that. And it took 14 months to get it approbation. So I was hoping for 1 year, and I got it for the year after. So it's always.
So you did get some.
Eventually, I got some in Cap Saint-Jacques and all that. Or it's just, there's so many different layers of bureaucracy. There's the people who run the park, then there's the downtown people, then there's people who run les grands parcs, and then there's the borough, and you just never know who you're supposed to talk to, and they never want to talk to you because they don't understand farming. There's no agricultural department in the city of Montreal, so nobody can really answer your questions or help you out. This last year, they've hired an agronome to work with them, so it's been the hope is that it'll be easier to get things done with this person in place at the city of Montreal.
Cool. Because I know there are other models in other cities where they do have an agricultural department,
Yeah.
and they are actively involved in a farm like the one that
Yeah,
you...
and just next to us in Laval, the mayor declared they want to be a ville nourricière, so like a city that can feed all its citizens sovereignty. So they've been pumping money into projects to grow food on public lands, helping Meals on Wheels and stuff like that. So hopefully it'll be an example to our political representatives what could be done locally to help out. Because there's plenty of vacant lots that could be farmed if it was just properly managed and the logistics were set out to do.
And just more about actually growing some of these certain vegetables. We talked about how when you go to the grocery store, all the squash seems to come from Mexico, but you can grow that here.
We could grow like we should have like potatoes, cabbage, carrots, beets, squash, onions from Quebec year round, or like at least till May. But just like I was saying 2 weeks ago, I ran out of my own squash. I went to the grocery store and it was only Mexican squash, and I couldn't believe it. Like I appreciate my Mexican brothers growing food for us, but I think we should be able to grow our own squash that keeps itself shelf life is months and months and months. So it's a strange world we live in food-wise. And I was at a friend's house this week, and she had a melon from Brazil, and it was just like, did this melon take a plane? Did it take a boat? Like, how did it take a truck from Brazil? Like, how does this food get here? And how is this, like, how can you afford to pay $4 for something? I don't know, it seems pretty crazy.
Yeah. And when you're growing, like I know when you grow carrots, there's a whole process. You do have a carrot harvester?
Yeah, so we have a seeder, a vacuum seeder that seeds the carrots. We have a harvester and a weeder. We have a washing line that we can do 1,000 pounds at a time of washing carrots. That helps a lot. And yeah, it's a challenge to grow carrots in clay, as everybody knows, because the clay can get solid. So we have nice, really high raised beds to grow our carrots.
And how do you make those raised beds? Just with tractors?
Just with tractors and attachments on the back there. We have a bed shaper, a rotoculteur that can loosen up the soil for you once before you shape the bed and then plant it. So it's a good crop.
And I know the carrot weeder uses fire, right?
You could use what they call a pirot désherbeur for the first weeding before the carrots come up. So
you're burning like whatever else is...
Yeah, so usually carrots is like a 10 to 12 days to germinate. What you could do also is just seed a bit of radish at the head of your bed, and when the radish comes up, then you flame the whole bed. It will kill any weeds that come up. But I don't use that technique on, because we're doing like a hectare of carrots at a time, so that would be quite the propane tank I would have to drive around on the back. But if you're doing smaller market garden style, it's the easiest way to avoid all that hand weeding in the summertime. Also, what I do for my carrots is I wait till end of June to seed them, so I skip that heavy weed that you get in the month of June, beginning of July, because that's like where the weed pressure is the highest usually. So I save one week of hand weeding.
And then you harvest them when?
Harvest around mid-September, end of September, yeah.
Okay. And then do you do a grading of the carrots where you throw out certain...
So the ones we sell to Metro has very specific standards of what they want a carrot to be. So it's like 6 to 8 inches with a certain diameter, and it can't be crooked, and it can't have two, one, and all that. So we sort them, but we don't throw any. The rest go to food banks anyways. So it's it's all.
But that is a requirement.
From grocery stores, they do demand perfect carrots.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Which is weird also.
And when it comes to potatoes, is there sorting that goes on with potatoes?
We haven't been selling any of our potatoes to grocery stores. It's all been donations, so we don't have to sort them. Right. But potatoes are pretty...
I remember there was one day where I came by the farm and there was a crate
Yeah.
of rotten potatoes.
Yeah, ones that didn't survive, because we usually we'll let the plants die, and those who are exposed to the sun or something like that will get some rot on them, or there's a lot of rain. So you do have to sort some potatoes, obviously, before giving them away.
And what about growing cabbage? How has that been?
Cabbage is great. It's one of the best crops, easiest crops. Just mechanical weeding. You get nice and big, and
even if there is like pests on the outside, the cabbage on the inside.
Well, there's a cabbage worm, but you can use something that's called BT, which is like a natural
Bacillus thuringiensis.
Exactly, and it'll scare them away right away. And if you do rotations, I haven't sprayed cabbage in a few years because I just moved them far away from where they've been, and it takes them a while to figure it out there. So same with potatoes, actually.
Okay. And I know that Cap Saint Jacques had things like a store and was even maybe going to try and do a restaurant, and then the pandemic kind of killed that. But so is that all gone now with Des Trois Pierres gone?
This year everything is gone except the little bit of farming that we'll be doing there. Hopefully we're in talks with other community groups to have a sugar shack, have a store, a restaurant, but it's really hard to run a store where there's nobody coming. Like if and I don't know, it's been a challenge to get people in there. It's the biggest park in Montreal, but nobody seems to know about it, so it's kind of weird. And I find it's the city's job to promote their park and all that, and they don't seem to really think about it much.
And then you were saying that this year will be one of the first years that they don't do maple syrup production, probably. And what are the challenges with maple syrup production?
Well, the biggest challenge in the recent year was the ash trees in the board and so we had to take down all the tubes that we had hooked up previously because the city came in to cut down the trees, and obviously they decided to do the sugar shack section in January, which is like the month before production starts. So we never got the tubes back up, and it would have cost so much money. So we went back to pails, but then we can't drive our vehicles in the cross-country ski lanes, so we were doing everything on foot, on snowshoe, like it was 1900 again. So it's not very profitable to do it that way. And I mean, it was mostly just for the public to see how it's done, and we'd sell a little bit in the store there, but it wasn't exactly our main production.
And as you were saying, you would even have to charge quite a bit for a bottle of maple syrup, and if you had to do it even beyond that, then it wouldn't make sense to sell it.
No, exactly, because we never wanted to join the Union of Maple Syrup Productions, because then you have quotas, and it gets really complicated, and they take it and then they resell it for you.
And maybe you could explain that. I mean, I always surprised to find this out, that when you buy maple syrup in the grocery store, they mix all the maple syrups from the different farms together, or they can.
Yep.
And so if you really want the unique maple syrup from one particular maple bush, you have to go to the bush
and buy it straight from the producer.
So like in your
situation, like in Cap Saint Jacques, we could only sell at our store and our farmers markets that we would do, because the Union of Producers of Maple Syrup, you have quotas, so they will take 80% of whatever you grow in a barrel, store it, and then they decide who gets it, export some.
And it's almost like a mafia.
It is like a mafia.
Yeah,
it's pretty. I never went too deep into it to figure out what exactly was going on, but it's pretty weird.
And they had that big heist of maple syrup.
Yeah, one year their factory got barrels and barrels.
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Liquid gold.
That's it. And I mean, that is the other great thing about Cap Saint Jacques. I teach at John Abbott College, and every year I always bring my students on a field trip to Cap Saint Jacques. And if it's in April or March, we're going to the sugar shack. Yeah. They're tasting maple syrup. So some of the people are tasting it for the first time in their life, even. Mm-hmm.
Or tasting maple water.
Or maple water.
Which people, like, they just think syrup comes out of the tree, basically, right? Because they've never seen it. and the process of it all. But it's great. Cap Saint-Jacques has huge potential, and we've always, you know, Ryan has had his fruit tree project and all that. I've always dreamt of having like a food trail through the park where we could have like fruit section and a nut section and a mushroom section and a vegetable, and people could just walk through and kind of see like a more permaculture regenerative farming in a conservation zone. And then we could do bigger farming in Bois de la Roche to feed more people and grow more of the crops that are local to us and that we know we can keep for a long time. So there's lots of potential, and hopefully we'll keep fighting the good fight and get people on our side to.
And I know you were saying that at the Bois de la Roche location, which is in Senneville, there is some constraints about like building a barn and stuff.
Well, exactly, because we have no buildings there, so there's hectares of lands, but we have not even a well, so we're pumping from Lac des Deux Montagnes the water to irrigate the fields and all that. So what we really need is a little garage for our equipment or tractors. We could fix a flat tire or change an oil leak or something, and a storage room for all the veg, because with the 5 hectares, our storage rooms is filled from August till October, even though we're shipping 20,000 pounds of veg every week out to the food bank. So it's a lot of logistical problems, and we could really use some infrastructure around the farming land to help to ease our jobs a little bit.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'll talk a little bit about being on the board of directors of the farmers market in St. Anne.
Yeah, so the St. Anne's farmers market is actually year-round.
Yeah.
It's outside on the boardwalk from
May to October.
Yeah, May 1st till October, and then we're in St. George's Church the winter time there. I think there's a 3-week break at Christmas where there's no market, but it's great. Lots of local producers. We have 4 or 5 vegetable producers in the summertime. Honey, maple syrup guys.
We have the Garlic Festival.
We have meat growers. What's his name? Lozon, and other more specialized like geese and stuff like that. It's a wonderful market. It's been 20 years now, I guess it's been running, so it kind of runs itself by now, so the board doesn't do much anymore. The girl who's been running it, she's been great, and she's leaving, so we're looking for a new market coordinator, but it's, every town should have a farmer's market.
And it hasn't always been easy. I mean, I know firsthand how I have to fight to keep the market there sometimes because we have people in our community.
Well, because a lot of the restaurants on the main strip feel that the market is taking their clients away, which is ridiculous because we bring so many people to town, and we always offered them on all that. So there was with the Merchants Association attention for a few years, but it's been in the last 3-4 years nobody's been complaining anymore. So
that's it. The longer that it sits there, the more that you cannot make the argument to make it.
Well, and Garlic Festival is the biggest event in town by far.
Yeah.
There used to be the car show that the Merchants Association ran. But we're supposed to be a green city with a car show. It's kind of stupid. But that stopped at the pandemic, I guess, and nobody ever wanted to take it up again.
It almost came back last year, but then they threw in the towel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's too much work for so little. So Garlic Fest, which is all organized by the market, is the biggest event in St. Anne's. And at the peak, we've had like 8,000 people come to town on a Saturday.
Right. That's right.
If they can't make money off of that, I don't know what they're doing.
That's it. And the town is planning to redesign that area.
Yeah, the market.
And in the redesign, it would be more geared towards making it work for the market.
Yeah, and also they were mentioning this year that they would shut down the whole main strip for Garlic Fest.
That's right.
To make it a town east to west event.
That's it.
So that'll be good stuff.
And we always in the town, because we have all these restaurants, we always wanted to see the restaurants use the produce from these markets, from these local producers that are right there, and then to make that connection, you know.
We have 2 now.
And so few of them have ever done it, but we now have 2, and one of them is the best restaurant in town now. It's called Le Bienheureux. It's my neighbor's brother, and really high quality, and almost all the ingredients are basically sourced from and he
farm.
Changes the menu all the time to reflect what's in season, you know, and what's available. Yeah. So maybe if anyone wants to ask any questions to Alex to wrap it up.
Yes, Randy.
Since it's a seed conference, do you have something to say about seeds like on the farm?
Well, if you could find yourself a good seed grower like you guys have, or like Dan from Tournesol, hang on to him because it's hard to find good seeds these days. I use a lot of seeds from two companies. One is Vesey's in the Maritimes, and the other is William Dam in Ontario. Try to keep it local. I make a point of doing one crop from our friends at Tournesol every year, but their seeds are more for home gardeners than for growers, so it's
And
harder.
why is that? What's the difference between like a big commercial?
Well, like the seeds that we would use, well, first is the volume, is having enough to grow. I use, for a hectare of carrots, is 1 million seeds of carrots, so that's a
Big
lot.
order.
A big order to use. And also the hybrids that they've come up with are more disease resistant and all that you can use. They're still organically grown, but they've been, modified by humans to resist the disease a bit more, and yeah.
Any other questions?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Expanding your operation in the future?
Sorry?
You plan on expanding your operation?
Yeah, the hope is that by 2027 the land will be drained and level, and will be up to 15 to 20 hectares of root crops for the food banks. Hope by 2028, hopefully.
And then there would still be more land to expand.
There would be more land to expand. but
It's quite a
yeah,
large area.
It's a large area, but I would then focus on other stuff than root crops.
Yeah.
Trying to, yeah.
Or even like permaculture,
Permaculture
fruit
and
trees.
stuff like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have you considered trying to get involved the schools to bring the children into the garden?
It's just
And get up some hands-on experience?
we've had in the past the cadets come, like to high school kids who are in the cadets who would come and help in the summer. Because most of the thing is in the summer, it's harder to get to schools. But anybody who asks, we would always say yes
Yeah.
to any.
So anybody
yeah.
here, whoever wants to bring a group,
To Cap Saint-Jacques, we're more than welcome to help. I have a girl who works with me who's great on communications and organizing all that there. So, yeah.
The reason I'm asking is if you can hook them at that young age,
Yep.
they're going to be you in 20 years.
Hopefully, yeah.
If we don't hook them, then
Absolutely.
or force them to work in the film industry first.
Yes, and then,
And then they'll,
then they'll come running.
that's it. And Mike, you had a question?
I have a question for you. You've got a lot of food waste, you've got stems and so on. How does the city allow, and this was also going to hit you, right? How does the city feel about composting? Is that something that they're encouraging you to do? There's huge amounts of food waste. There's all these leaves that are being picked up by the city. There's all kinds of green waste. All that properly being composted is as good as it gets in terms of agricultural inputs. Increases our sustainability. How have you been able to break through in that? Because I know that it's always a bit of a touchy subject.
1 year, I asked the city, "Oh, can I have some of your compost? I'll use it in my garden." Not a good year for us. We found cigarette butts and broken glass in the compost. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. We started composting with when we had animals. We had animal waste, so we could compost properly and everything. But they never allowed us to make it too big, right? They didn't want the smell. They don't want all that. And because it's zone conservation, you got to be careful of creeks and not too close to the water and all that. So it's very complicated. We asked them to get one of those fancy composters that you can compost in 30 days. They never had the interest in spending the money for that. So, unfortunately, no, the city does not encourage composting that much.
And I know at McDonald campus as well, before I was elected, there was a mayor that was trying to see if we could have our own composting going on the farm somewhere at McDonald campus. And again, it was like the provincial government said, no, it's not zoned for that. Then it becomes like a whole nother site that you have to have a special classification for. So, a bit too complicated for no good reason often, I think.
Often for no good reason,
Yeah.
especially like in Bois de la Roche where there's nobody really, you could have a compost pile easily.
That's it.
Yeah.
And where they do have composting going on,
Yeah.
in places like La Chute, it is on agricultural land.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes?
Considering the size of your operation, what do you consider your biggest competition?
I guess the biggest challenge, not competition, is just being able to have a long-term vision, because we're always on such a short-term lease that we're year to year basically. We're basically like paycheck to paycheck, but year to year for farming. So it's anytime we want to invest like a new greenhouse, well, the bank will say, I can't lend you the money because you only have a 1-year lease. What happens if your lease is not renewed and then you don't have a greenhouse anymore and you can't produce, you can't pay me back? So it's more try to convince the city to give us a 20-year lease so we can invest in the land and maximize the use of our land.
Yeah.
Why they won't give you one release?
You would have to ask the politicians why.
Yeah, it's a stupid thing that seems to be. I mean, of course, they're always dealing with the cycles of elections, and somebody new gets into power, and then they don't want to advance a project like that. But I don't know. I think that there's a way around it.
I think it stemmed from all the corruption. So they figured if we just do short-term agreements, even if somebody's corrupt, we can get rid of them quickly.
Right.
So I think they're really afraid to commit to people with everything that's happened in this country with government corruption.
And I mean, you know, even like the companies they use for recycling and composting, often these are very corrupt companies. And I really feel like we're at a point now where is recycling worth it? Because so much of what we put in the blue bin does not get recycled, and some of these corrupt companies stick it in landfill. You know,
don't depress us.
I know, but I mean, let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
And what I've always found is the big evil corporations run the world and get away with murder, and they tell us little people to compost, recycle, all this stuff, and force us to take care of this problem that they created and that they could solve, right? So to me, increasingly over the years, my attitude is, well, you know, I'll go for this thing if it's actually going to have an actual effect, but, you know, like even with climate change, the U.S. military makes the most greenhouse gas emissions, right? I mean, it kind of doesn't matter what I do at my house, you know.
Micro change brings mega change, Ryan.
That's right.
You gotta believe
right.
it.
You gotta be the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely, and that's why I still stay in the game.
Yeah.
But you know,
But it is.
that's it.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to invite you to Gunawaga's Community Compost. It was, when we built it, it started off slow, and we just encouraged individuals that were passionate, and we made sure that they were going to be putting the cigarette butts and whatever in there. And community participation has grown. Maybe we started in 2018, 2019. We haven't had our community open house yet. Hopefully either this spring or in the fall. But we got about 27-30% participation, and we have a really beautiful compost. And the Compost Council of Canada came over. We were part of the tour that they do with their symposium, and they came to our composting facility, and everybody was really impressed. I think Curtis, you've been there, right? And it really looks good. And most of the people here in Guanajuato don't even know we have it yet. So
Amazing work.
that's been there. And
Nice.
we gave compost to the food forest, and we were really proud of it because we just did it and we didn't ask anybody. We just did it. Yeah. It's really working out well. I don't do I don't follow a provincial permitting system, but I
What's the compost you get at the community garden? Where does that come from?
It's the Montreal one that
Okay.
often has
Yeah.
crap in it. Yeah.
Really something I invite you to come see.
I would love to see
Thank
that.
you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a more inside thoughts, but relevant question. What type of capital does it take to initiate and sustain, say, like a hectare of organic farming?
Depending on, like if you want to stay at 1 hectare or if you want to grow it to bigger. Let's say if you want to grow to 10, 20 hectares, you would need, you know, a couple of tractors, one greenhouse for seedlings, then everything, the storage space around it. You could probably $500,000 to start a project, and then a couple $100,000 a year to run it and stuff like that. Depending, obviously, if you're doing, if you're only doing 1 or 2 crops, then you can specialize, mechanize, so you won't need as much staff. But if you're doing multiple crops, then it's probably better to just have hand workers and stuff like that. So it really depends on what you're thinking of growing. But I would say $500,000 to start a big project is probably the most basic.
But if you were doing just 1 hectare, it would be a lot less.
If you're doing just 1 hectare and you want to keep it at 1 hectare, then you probably just get a handheld tractor and a small greenhouse for your seedlings, probably go 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100,000, yeah.
You know, there's that guy, Jean-Martin Fortier.
No, we don't talk about him.
He had some help.
don't
he
talk
had
about
some
it.
help.
Yeah.
But he loves to talk about, you know,
Yeah, his wife still works 80 hours a week on
I
that
know,
farm
I
while
know,
he's
I know.
running conferences and being on TV and all that stuff. No.
but he loves to talk about how his farm is, you know, it's not too machinery heavy.
Yeah.
And you
But
know,
him, it's 1 acre.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very intensive.
Yeah.
He uses the space very efficiently, and his wife does exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's give
Yeah.
credit where credit is due.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And they're still together.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
All right. Well, thank you
everyone.
very much. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would it take for farmers to start buying more of the locally, like farmer seed here, seed farmers here, because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, as seed farmers, we're super marginalized in Quebec. We don't make a lot of money, and this is the same conversation that I have with the friends that I love. It's like, well, you're not growing hybrids, which I get, and I understand the reason why farmers would use hybrids. We're trying to produce as much food in a short amount of time. But is there a space for this sort of like experimental spaces on farms where there's more seeds that are bought from seed farmers for like as a larger thing? I'm asking you,
Yeah.
you don't represent all farmers.
No, I absolutely think there is more space for local seed farmers and heirloom seeds, and bringing back, because we used to only grow heirloom seeds once upon a time, and we managed to survive. So I don't see, obviously, the bigger you get, the more pressure you have from disease and bugs and all that. But there's a way to do it. I'm 100% sure. I've always told Steven I'd love some heirloom seeds to try. We tried squash one year. We got destroyed by the insects, but we'll keep trying. I'm sure there's a solution. It's just, I guess, you just have to prove that it works and that it's marketable in the proper setting. I think if we have a regenerative permaculture kind of garden, then the room for heirloom seeds is a lot easier to find because all the accompanying plants are there to protect it. If you're just growing hectares of squash, of course it's going to be difficult to use only heirloom seeds because then the predators know where the squash is. So it's finding that balance, and I think there's room for everybody, and it's super important to keep those seeds because once there's a bug that gets over whatever latest hybrid thing and destroys, like happened in Asia with the rice, right? They had all these hybrid rice grains, and then one bug found a way to kill all that rice, and they almost died of starvation again. So it's just a question of showing that you can make a living off of it, and then somebody will do it. And I think the permaculture, regenerative, the small rooftop gardens are the best places for local heirloom seeds.
And I would say that, you know, Tournesol, Dan Brisebois is going to be here tomorrow. They had this massive increase in sales during the pandemic, right? Where basically everybody panicked and said, I got to have my own seeds to grow my own food. And so they were at this place where they thought, oh, this is the perfect time to expand. We're going to expand our seed production because we assume that next year it's going to be like that too, and next year, but instead it all dried out right after things went back to normal. And now they're kind of in this position where they're like, do we expand our seed production and scale up, or does it make sense? So
4 seed farms closed last year.
right.
That's a huge loss.
Yeah.
Right.
for Quebec.
Right. Well, and you know,
Women too.
yeah. Well, in my opinion, you know, the Quebec government or the federal government, but you know, Quebec loves to talk about how, you know, we care about you know, the Quebec nation or whatever, and you know, certainly the agricultural heritage of the province should matter, should be worth something. And to me, you know, there should be tons of money going into that. But of course, that's all been infiltrated by these GMO companies that want to own the seed, so that we don't own the seed as people anymore. But it's obviously valuable because they've gone in there and done that, right? They've created this scenario where they basically have robbed us of all of that. So to me, it is extremely valuable. Everybody has to wake up to it, and you know, obviously the government could play a leading role in that and tell the public, hey, this is important, right? But they don't, you know. Yeah, but they could. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I think seed activism. It's got to become a thing.
Well,
you know. And Stephen has been a seed activist all his life, you know, or most of his life. And
Well, food sovereignty comes from
That's
there,
it.
right? This
That's
is how we survive.
Yeah. Yeah. But obviously, there's that big seed vault, right? Where is it, in Norway?
In Denmark?
Where is it? Yeah,
Norway?
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Bill Gates has invested in stuff like that, right?
Excellent.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.